Hello and welcome to ADC Live. Today we have a very special episode talking about LumApps content gardening. We're first, as always, we're going to introduce pro tip of the day. Then what I'm excited about, things that are latest LumApps features, and then we'll go directly into to Katie and meet her. So first thing, pro tip of the day. So I'm not sure if you know this, I don't know if you know this. You might, most likely, but there's a very cool thing. So LumApps, there was a new feature that was fairly recently released in the last couple of releases ago, I believe, and now you can actually add new emojis both into articles, into posts, even into content. It's actually pretty simple. They've done a lot of good work here. I'll just kind of quickly show it to you guys. So say here on my learning development space, I have an article I want to create, right? And let's say, thanks for tuning in, right? Like I'm not going to add the banner here, but are you enjoying your day? And then here, I'm just going to go here, and they have new emoji icon. You can first obviously go in here and search for the icon you want. You can do heart, let's say, or different type of hearts. You can add a heart here, or I can even say cheers, Katie, and then I'll do a semicolon, and I can just type in, let's say, so they have champagne, or maybe beer. They have beers here, no champagnes. Okay, beer. I'm sure they have wines here as well because it's LumApps is French. There we go. We have wine. Perfect. So cheers, Katie. So we have that. Very simple to do. I'm going to publish that, and it's going to appear on the article. Then there it is. Very simple to do. You can also do the same thing within the content with the rich text editor, rich text widget. You can just simply go in here, double click, same thing. Cheers, Katie and Evo, and same thing here. Let's say I'm just going to do a semicolon here and type in wine. Same thing, wine, and let's say heart or muscle. Maybe the muscles here. Let's see. There it is. Cool. They have biceps. Nice. Okay. And there it is.
I hope that we will have the possibility to customize the icons and to add our own icons, as you do in Slack, so that you can match your culture with LumApps, actually.
That's a very good, especially if you bring content over from Slack into LumApps, right, and kind of migrate it from one to the other. That makes a lot of sense. I don't think, Katie, this was there when you were, but this is a really nice, cool feature. I know it's took a while to do, but they really are evolving in this area. So that's something that I think a good pro tip of the day. Now, what we're excited about. So since today we're talking about bulk actions and talking about content gardening in LumApps, there's a new feature always been talked about. How do I do things at scale? How do I go in and update multiple authors, or search contents by less modified date, or do all these kind of things? There's always been traditionally a tool called a toolbox, and it's a very manual effort. You kind of go in and you have to load a script, or you have to load in an Excel or CSV, and then load it out, and then to kind of do a lot of manual import and export. So today LumApps has released right now, which is in closed beta, something called the bulk actions management tool. If you do want this tool, obviously, if you don't have it yet, you can go to LumApps support, go to CSM, and ask them to whitelist it for your organization. But the cool thing is that you can actually, first of all, unlike before, where before I had to go to search for contents in the back office. Let's say I'm not sure where the content is. I had to kind of go through each one of these individually to find in the content type. Here with this tool, you now have a global feed of all contents. It automatically adds to your back office, where you can search for all contents across all the content types, which is really cool. So this is actually the tool itself, the bulk management closed beta tool. They're still evolving it, but some things you can really do just like out of the box. Let's say, for example, I want to search for contents that were all created by, let's say, Evo, right? And I'm going to search for all the contents that created by Evo, and then I'm going to go in and apply. Okay, so I have all these contents created by Evo. I'm going to apply. Now let's say if I'm going here, I can also kind of filter down. I can add other things here. Then once I do that, I can actually do this. I can now update the author. I can actually, first of all, I can filter down further, let's say global news or admin contents itself, if there are. I can search by expiration date, by publication date, by workflows, etc. And finally, this tool actually, as it evolves, I can go in and I can modify and I can update the author of this tool at scale. So let's say I'm going to go ahead and select a couple of these pieces of content like this. Then let's say I'm going to do either edit options or more options. I can do on archive or unpublish. I can go here, and then I can keep the author as is, or I can change the author. So let's say I replace. Let's say I want to change those from Ivo to Misha, let's say, for example, right? So I can do that. Now, I don't want to do it right now, but let's say if I did, well, so what is the use case of this? A great use case. Let's say, for example, you have editors, right? You have folks who went in, create a lot of knowledge content, right? And now those folks are no longer with the company, right? Katie has dealt with this a lot of times. The folks create, and they've been editors. They can kind of have a role, a scalable role, allows folks who create the content to moderate it. Now they're gone, right? So who has to manage it? Who's got the, who's it falling on now? So once you update this author, essentially it lets them now have the capability of editing this content, and which is a very powerful feature for content governing, right? And essentially the content itself can be reassigned to somebody else at scale. So you can find Evo, he did hundreds of pieces of content, or let's say Evo is no longer responsible for these content, somebody else. You can kind of transfer ownership to a different user, which is really great. Same thing with expiration dates. Content's about to expire by this user or by specific metadata. You can change the expiration dates, right? That's kind of part of the content gardening effort that we're going to be discussing shortly, which is, again, I think is a very nice add-on. And furthermore, you can even kind of update some of the metadatas on this content as well, right? Metadatas, let's say you can add, remove, replace, which is really powerful. As you can see, this tool is evolving, has been evolving since I deployed it here on my partner platform about 3 months ago. I think some of these were not here with metadata updates. Now they are. So it's constantly evolving, and it's really good to see these options coming to fruition. So that's what I'm excited about as far as LumApps is concerned with the features. But what I'm really excited about is having Katie here. So Katie, maybe tell us a little about yourself and what you're excited about.
Yeah, hi. My name's Katie Achev. It's nice to be here. I'm from Portland, Oregon. I've been in the tech industry just, about 10 years ago now. I think I had my first job at Squarespace. I met Misha when I was working at New Relic as their internet specialist and internal content manager. So I've had a lot of experience in really large scale content auditing and management. New Relic specifically, we had about 3,000 employees when I was working there, and there's just a lot to handle. So even just watching this, the bulk actions thing you just did, Misha, I was like, oh man, like I love to see LumApps expanding as a platform, because that kind of stuff would be so helpful for us, especially with as much like kind of turnover and ownership, things like that. So that's a really awesome feature, even just to see that. Like I haven't seen that before, so that was really cool. But yeah, I'm really kind of interested, especially in kind of like knowledge management and documentation and just auditing and automating things to make our lives a little easier when you're handling with lots and lots of content like I did at New Relic. So thank you for having me, Misha. It's really nice to be here.
Of course, I'm really happy that you're able to be here to share your experience in this and some of the history, and I know we have some war stories coming up as well.
Yeah, for sure.
And I think, like we discussed this before, but why is content gardening important? I mean, sometimes folks roll out the internet, and obviously it looks really great. It's nice and fresh on your homepage. Everything's beautiful, and they get great news, right? Everything's very, very hot and fresh and attractive. And over time, right, things start to kind of disintegrate a little bit. If it's not, there's no upkeep. And kind of similar here, right? When folks see something new and fresh, and you want to look at it, you want to feel it, but and it creates engagement. It creates people want to come back and see more new things, more fresh things, right? But as the internets grow and contribution grows, and there's more people coming in and starting to engage with it, right? New content is going to be created. What that means is, first of all, it's great new content is created, but it also means that the old content has to be moderated. Because if it's not, right, nobody's going to care. Nobody wants to look at a withered old newspaper, right? If they go to search, they don't want to find something old or new because that's going to create, them losing engagement on the platform. They might even stop, that at some point might even create attrition at some level. And people will never come back. They'll say, you know what, you want me to come back to this internet? I just wasted my time searching for something, right? And you want me to come back? No, or my dead body. Because folks don't want to waste their time. It just took 5 minutes or 10 minutes of my corporate hours to go and find something that I can't even find. I might as well go in Slack or go somewhere else and ask somebody else there, right? So that's really the problem. And really the impacts of low or no content gardening is that, first of all, folks get inaccurate search results, right? Once they fool me once, shame on you, right? They're all saying fool me twice. Right? How does it go? Shame on me, right? So same thing here. Okay, I went once, I didn't find something. Okay, no problem. I'm not going to come back the second time because now I have low content integrity. I don't trust the content that's put out there. I don't trust the search. Content comes up, it's very old. I don't even know if it's new or updated, right? And eventually that comes back to reducing platform engagement. People, and it's really hard to get the engagement back. And that's where the effort comes in to really, come back, go from the top down, get leadership involved. And we really don't want that, right? We really want to do it right from day one. So with that in mind, Katie, anything that I'm missing or here? What are your thoughts?
Yeah, totally. I mean, this will kind of go into some of the stories I've been talking about. And yeah, we can kind of go right into this of some of the symptoms you'll see when content auditing or governance haven't really been done correctly. Saying things like, I can't find anything. Is this up to date? If that's not very clear, then you have kind of a foundational content gardening problem, if you will, or something we would deal with a lot was lots of duplicates or outdated, people not knowing which thing was which or what was the most up to date. One I like to bring up too is relying on back channel communication over tooling. Like if someone, sometimes I would get pings from, someone I'd never talked to before that just says, hi, Katie. And I'm like, okay, what is this going to be about? If someone is coming to me and saying, hi, Katie, instead of using the tools that we have to find what they need, that means that there's some sort of foundational issue. Like they shouldn't have to go to the admin just to be able to find the information they want. So that kind of goes into the shadow systems thing here too, right? Random docs that are in different places, other tools that are like Slack or whatever that are replacing the actual content management system you're using that's supposed to be a single source of truth. So I think when you start seeing these things, that's when it's really important to start thinking about what you can do to manage your content a little better. So that goes well into here. Yeah, just this slide I kind of made just to think about things. One of the first things I did at New Relic was a big content audit of everything. So content age and review date, how old was it, when was it last reviewed? A nice thing about LumApps is you can see the last time that a page has been updated. So going into like those settings and seeing like who was the last person who touched it. Sometimes I would find content where the last person who touched it hadn't been in the company in a year. And then also defining like a cadence of when content should be reviewed annually, 6 months. It kind of depends how much content you have. We had so much that doing it more than annually was just not really able to be done. And then ownership. So I love seeing that ownership replacement tool. Is it still accurate about the orphan content? Because we saw a lot of that at New Relic just because it was such a big company. And actually one of the requests I would get often was, hey, this person is leaving. Can I just absorb everything that has to do with them? And I'd have to kind of go through and manually try to do that for them. So seeing that LumApps has made that improvements just is awesome. That's gonna be so helpful in this kind of content auditing and management. So and then also, thinking a lot about engagement metrics. We used a lot of metrics to figure out kind of what was being used the most, bounce rates, all that kind of stuff. And then, just relevance of is what is on there, what's being represented. Like New Relic had a huge branding upheaval when I was there, where we changed from like one logo and one color set and everything to another. So that was like a huge lift for us of just replacing all of the branding to make sure that it's all up with the new logos and everything. So these are just some kind of really basic things that you can think about when you're reviewing content or starting to do a big audit like that. I think all of these things can be really helpful for that process.
And how much time, like, but we are going to talk about metrics later in a different episode about analytics, but how much time does it, like, did it take you to, go through to audit and then all the back and forth with, like, on average, to go through the entire site audit and then go through like page by page? What is it?
It was a lot. I mean, when I started the process, we kind of started from scratch. So it took me, I don't know, I want to say like 4 or 5 months probably to go through the entire audit of taking all of these different things and also just defining what the criteria was for the audit. We just had like this massive spreadsheet that went through everything. But the thing is, once you do that and once you set those parameters and have them ready, then it makes it a lot easier going forward to continue doing it. But it does, take that kind of like big lift in the beginning. But that's kind of my point in talking about content gardening, auditing, stuff like that, is like, do it earlier and save yourself a lot of trouble down the road when things are maybe more chaotic and you need to just have things arranged as they are. But yeah, it's I'm not saying it's an easy feat. It definitely takes some bandwidth, but it's super, super worth it in the end.
And you're like you're really in the trenches a lot of times. So you know the process much better than anyone else. I'm just curious, you mentioned the criteria. Do you remember what some of the criteria were, like in general? And how did you define, okay, these are like the most important, these are like the least important? If you could talk a little bit about that, that'd be very interesting, I think.
Yeah, and so it was kind of like a hybrid of, we did use analytics for sure. I think we ended up injecting Google Analytics into it to get it really, really refined, but we used LumApps Analytics as well, of just seeing what were the most viewed pages, what's being used the most, some of the communities and stuff. And some of the results were even like a little surprising. So going through and deciding, what are the most visited pages, and then on the other side of that, what are the least visited pages? Like, are some of these pages, have they not been viewed? I think we said like if no activity had been done in over like 6 months, 9 months, a year, then we decided to archive them. So trying to get out some of that old recycled content too, that's just not doing anybody any favors. So it's and I think other than that, there was a lot of just like tracking down owners, making sure the right people are seeing it, stuff like that. But yeah, it took a very long time. And I think each company needs to define a little differently what works best for them. But I think just looking at what is being looked at the most and what isn't being looked at the most is a good place to start.
Interesting. And I guess if the question I'm thinking, even I know you and I discussed this a little bit before, regarding right now, like when now there's a lot of AI, right, and AI kind of helps with facilitating a lot of things, and like, do you see AI kind of taking or helping with some of these things, or how would it improve some of the things that you were doing, and how would if at all, how would it help you?
Yeah, totally. Me personally, I'm very middle ground when it comes to AI. I think it gets a little too much power given to it. I think people are a little too scared of it in some ways. And I think that there's a middle ground where it can be used for, especially things like doing this kind of like, I mean, you can almost call this kind of like bulk content stuff, like AI, right? Anything that can like automate and take some of the work, some of the manual work off of your plate, I think is where AI is really helpful. I do think, just having done so much content management myself, that there's something that AI can't really replace, which is just getting a human who understands the company, who kind of knows what's being looked for. Like, I guess, I don't know, maybe 10 years from now, this will be a different conversation. But I think that having a human, just go through and be able to look at, to define the parameters of what's important for a company's intranet or, internal content or whatever you want to call it. I think that there's still an element of that AI isn't going to be replaced. So it's like, it's kind of my thing with AI is like, how can I use it to kind of amplify the work that I'm already doing and get some of the like heavy lifting stuff off of my plate without, having it completely replace. I just don't think it's at that point yet. And I think we're better for it. I think the human touch of, having having a dedicated internal content manager and stuff, stuff like that, like having that one person or having a team, that is able to understand the content of a company is a really, really valuable thing. And I don't think AI is at a point yet that can replace that, but we'll see.
Guillaume, what's your take on it as far as like use AI tools for content gardening? To what degree do you think that'll take away a role from someone doing this kind of effort, or amplify, or maybe a little bit of both?
Well, I think that the AI is quite powerful for low value operations. I mean, when you have so many pages where to replace some kind of text, of course, you can leverage an artificial intelligence agent to do that kind of stuff. Of course, I cannot imagine giving full control over your digital workplace. AI agents should always be right, in the sense that they should be controlled, and you as a human being, you should be able to decide whether to complete the action they propose or not. Given that we have more and more digital workplaces with content that becomes outdated, certainly AI and semantics might have a role to play in that.
Interesting. Okay. Well, now this is where the fun stuff gets. This is where we have some stories to share, stories in the war room. We got some. I know, Katie, you had a lot of these. You had a lot of war stories to tell. A lot of badges of honor that you probably gave to them.
Yeah, totally. Well, and I mean, you were right there with me through a lot of this, Misha. You really kind of saw this from the beginning to end with it. So, Misha and I were talking about, different things that happened when I was at New Relic. And so when I joined New Relic, we had just migrated from Jive to LumApps, which clearly was a huge shift. And by the time I got there, the transition itself was done. So I kind of came in to be like the content cleanup crew a little bit, but there was clearly no content audit that had been done before the migration. So literally everything that was in Jive had just been kind of lifted and shifted to LumApps. And so I compared it many times. I think I probably said this to you before, Misha, that like when you're like moving apartments and you pack up everything and you have like that one box that you never unpacked and you just keep moving it from apartment to apartment and never really look at it. Or I've done that anyway. I'm pretty sure it's around here somewhere. So, that's kind of like, that becomes in an intranet, it multiplies and becomes like a digital junk drawer of just like a bunch of stuff that you keep moving around. So there was all of this content that no one was using, but still is taking up space and is just cluttering search results. It's making findability more difficult. And it kind of creates this distrust of the platform right away when it's really a content problem and not a platform problem. So, when I came in, that was causing a lot of frustration that people couldn't find what they needed. And it wasn't, about the platform, it's about governance and about auditing. So, something to take away for me is just like, if any sort of change in the company is coming, like doesn't have to be a migration or anything, but just like a reorg, branding, redo, like any sort of thing that you can like do it when you have the bandwidth to do it, because your intranet is only as good as the content that it surfaces. So, make sure that the content that you have is as good as possible, and it's going to make your lives a lot easier down the road.
Do it right the first time. Yep.
Yeah, do it right the first time, and then, save you a lot of trouble. Trust me.
I know you had another story about this.
Yeah.
A lot of times,
totally.
Folks think that they can kind of be a superhero, right? And work silo, but I don't think that's the message.
Yeah, I like this one, and I think you kind of watched this happen too while we were working together, Misha. something that we were noticing is that we had all of these content creators, kind of like power users, people, we were looking at who was creating the most content, who was putting the most stuff out there, was publishing regularly to LumApps, but not all of their content was landing, or they weren't getting the right visibility for it. They were kind of working separate from like my team with PJ, my old buddy. PJ, if you're watching this, shout out to you. But it wasn't, that wasn't a tech problem. That was like a governance opportunity, right? So what we ended up doing was creating a champions program of kind of the power users from different divisions and different departments. So we would identify, one or two active publishers in each department, bring them into this group. We gave them extra support, and we kind of do one-on-one sessions with some of them, so they'd really get to use or get to learn all of the features of LumApps that maybe they didn't know about. And it created, it not only helped us with like having just more power users out there, because then they also could take that to their teams and be kind of little like mini subject matter experts on their teams, so that takes some of the stress off of us to be answering all of those questions. But we also noticed that after that, doing check-ins, giving them specific templates for their team, stuff like that the content got cleaner, that the tagging got better. Ownership was really clear, and we even made them their own kind of some like custom individual pages or like division-wide pages, so that they knew exactly where their content was going. They knew how to tag it. And then that made it feel, a lot more collaborative from the top down. So if you're struggling with, keeping up with quality, then look at the people who are contributing the most and help them out. And then I feel like that has like a nice ripple effect, that it helps raise the bar for everybody else.
And it's like, to that point, really, because it's not just like a place where people just dump stuff and you have to go and clean up the stuff, right? It's really intended to be an experience. That's why I call it an experience, because people are meant to kind of come in, engage, and make like, even this in this current state, like hybrid work environment, right? It is meant to be like a part of your workplace. So
sure,
to engage, to kind of have fun, and that's kind of the message that to take out. So it's a lot of times, like, I work with teams and they have nobody at all. Like you guys have, there's three of you guys, which is really great. That you kind of divided up different areas of it, and obviously I was there to be able to help as well. But that's definitely, but it's not just the core team, right? It's like you said, working with stakeholders, getting like power users, and getting folks excited about it, so that this way they can all kind of everybody can benefit from it.
Well, it's kind of that idea too that you just said of like the difference between just like an intranet or just like a repository of information and like a digital workplace. And with how hybrid things are now, that's really important to focus on and to make people still feel connected, even though they're not actually working in the same space.
And on that note, so we can, I guess, do a quick summary. Katie, if you want to.
Yeah. So this is all the stuff we were just kind of talking about. So what does, governments mean for your org? What are you, not just governments, but kind of auditing, like we're using those a little interchangeable, even though they're a bit different, but clarify roles and responsibilities, set expectations for your content owners, and then find what governance model matches your company's scale. Those are kind of things that if you're more interested in, I'd suggest looking up a little bit. But I think my big takeaway is like spotting the red flags early, right? If you keep having people saying, I can't find anything, like that's a taxonomy or structure issue. If they don't know what's up to date, then things aren't set up in the right way that it's showing those kind of published by dates or, and again, like duplicates, dead links, shadow docs, those are all content issues. And then, just reviewing, setting aside time to review, like putting that into your work schedule or your team's work schedule or whoever is taking ownership of that, like that should be a priority for your team. So content age, ownership, relevance, don't wait till it's broken. Do it when you have the time and not when something else is going on. You want to like make sure you give yourself that time. So, and then, assigning owners, reminders, and templates and checklists. I could go into all of these things quite a bit more, but those would be my main takeaways for y'all.
And those are really good ones to come away with. So we want to just say what's next, because we have a couple of more exciting episodes coming up. We have the next one is about effective community engagement practices with another industry expert. So really, one I highly recommend everybody joins. If you're looking, you have low engagement numbers, right? Just kind of some things we talked about today, but from a different perspective, from a community management and managing communities, right? How to keep those numbers high, how to really keep folks engaged, and again, a lot of the same things we discussed, but from a different perspective. Talking about numbers, talking about more in-depth engagement with leads and power users. And then also later in July, the last webinar in July is going to talk about analytics, more of an analytics deep dive about LumApps' out-of-the-box analytics, things you can get from GA4 and Tag Manager to things you can get from Data Lake, and even beyond, right? Things that any metrics you want to gain that are not natively available. How do you get those metrics? So we're going to talk about those tiers as well. With that, I want to thank Katie for joining us, for sharing your insights, your experience, your stories. Kind of bring the energy to live. It was a real pleasure having you.
Yeah, thank you so much for having me. It's so nice to see you again, Misha, and you too, Ivo, and talk about content
Thanks a lot,
stuff.
Katie.
Yeah.
All good things. It's a lot of fun. And thank you guys all for tuning in. We'll see you next time. ADC Live is out.